"Welcome to the Grand Whitmore Hotel, Mr. and Mrs. Carter," I said, holding the key card. My wife smiled, then looked up at me, and all the color drained from her face. For a second, nobody moved. The lobby was full. A Friday night in downtown Cleveland, just past 7:30, valet doors opening and closing, suitcases rolling across marble, a piano, playing something soft near the bar. Normal noise, normal people. And right there in the middle of it, my wife stood next to another man wearing the necklace I bought her for our 20th anniversary, checking into a suite under his name. I kept my voice steady. "Your presidential suite is ready," I said, like I'd said it 100 times before. Inside, my chest felt tight. Not sharp pain, just pressure. Like something heavy had been set down and wasn't going anywhere. The man beside her, Richard Carter, didn't recognize me. That much was clear. He had that kind of confidence some men carry, the kind that assumes every room already belongs to them. He slid his credit card across the counter without looking at me. "We'll need privacy," he said. "No interruptions, and make sure the dinner comes up right at 8. "Yes, sir," I answered. My wife Elaine still hadn't said my name. She just stared at me. 24 years of marriage, and in that moment it felt like we were strangers who had accidentally walked into the same room. I printed the key cards, 2 of them. My hands didn't shake. I noticed that, and it surprised me. "Elevators are to your left," I said. "Enjoy your stay." That was it. That was all I gave her. No scene, no questions, not there. But that moment, that exact moment, had started 3 days earlier when Marcia knocked on my office door. Marcia Bell had been with the hotel longer than I had. Late 50s, sharp eyes didn't waste words. If she said you needed to see something, you went and looked. She closed the door behind her and held out a printed reservation. "Dan," she said, "you're going to want to see this." I took it from her, expecting the usual. VIP guest, maybe a complaint, maybe a scheduling issue. But then I saw the name, Richard Carter. Room presidential suite, 2 nights. Special requests, champagne roses, private dinner, late checkout. And then underneath it, second guest Elaine Carter. I didn't say anything at first. Marcia watched my face carefully. She knew me well enough not to rush it. "You want me to flag it?" she asked. "Or are we treating it like any other reservation?" I read the name again. Elaine Carter. Not Elaine Mercer, not my wife's name. But close enough. I folded the paper once, cleaned down the middle, and set it on my desk. "We treat it like any other reservation," I said. Marcia nodded. "No questions." That's why I trusted her. After she left, I just sat there for a while. My office looked out over Euclid Avenue. Traffic moving slow, people crossing the street, a bus stopping at the corner. Life going on like it always does. I remember thinking how strange it was that everything outside could stay normal, while something inside your life had already started to break. Now, to be fair, things hadn't been right between me and Elaine for a while. Nothing dramatic, no big fights, no screaming matches. Just distance. She'd started taking more weekend trips. Spa weekends, she called them. Indianapolis, sometimes Cincinnati. Always with her friend Monica, or so she said. She'd gotten more careful with her phone. Screen turned away. Password changed. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But after 2 decades of marriage, you don't jump straight to the worst conclusion. Not if you're trying to keep something together. And I always was. Elaine used to say I was the steadiest man she knew. She said that at our daughter Megan's wedding, standing up with a glass of champagne in her hand, smiling at me like she meant it. "Daniel is the steadiest man I've ever known," she told a room full of people. At the time, I felt proud. Later on, I started to wonder if steady was just another word for predictable. Or worse, forgettable. I worked a lot. That part's true. The Grand Whitmore wasn't some easy job you clock in and out of. When I came in, the place was barely holding together. Staff turnover, vendor issues, a whole mess of deferred maintenance. I spent long nights there. Sometimes I slept in one of the empty rooms just to be back on the floor early. Elaine never asked for details. To her, I was just the hotel guy. "You're always at that place," she'd say. "It's like you're married to the building." I used to laugh it off. Now I see what she meant. 3 days before that Friday night, I went home to Columbus after my shift. Elaine was in the bedroom packing a small overnight bag. "Heading out?" I asked. "Indianapolis," she said without looking up. "Spa weekend, I told you." "Which hotel?" I asked. It came out casual, or at least I tried to make it sound that way. She paused just for a second. Then she zipped the bag. "Why are you suddenly so interested?" she said. "I'm not," I answered. "Just asking." She gave me a look, not angry, not guilty, just annoyed. "Daniel, I'm tired. Can we not do this?" "Do what?" "Ask where my wife was going for the weekend." I let it go. That night after she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen and looked at my phone for a long time before I made the call. Monica picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Daniel," she said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I told her. "I just had a quick question. Elaine mentioned you two were heading to Indianapolis this weekend. I wanted to make sure I got the right place thinking about sending something over for you both." There was a pause. "A gift," Monica said. "That's sweet, but I'm not going anywhere this weekend." I felt something in my chest shift. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "I haven't seen Elaine in a few weeks, actually." "Why?" I stared at the kitchen table. "Must have mixed something up," I said. "Thanks, Monica." "Daniel," she added, her voice softer now. "Is everything all right?" "Yeah," I said. "It's fine." But it wasn't. I hung up and sat there in the quiet house listening to the refrigerator hum. For the first time in my marriage, I stopped asking questions out loud. I started listening instead. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was pacing or throwing things. I've never been that kind of man. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle the way it does after midnight. Pipes clicking, wood shifting, the small, ordinary sounds of a place that still thought it was a home. Elaine slept beside me like nothing had changed. That part stayed with me longer than anything else. The next morning, I got up before her, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table. Same spot I'd been in the night before. The light came in through the window just enough to make everything look normal again. It almost fooled me. When Elaine came downstairs, she was already dressed for the road. Casual, comfortable, like any other weekend trip. "You heading in early?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Cleveland's been busy." She nodded, grabbed her bag, and poured herself coffee. No hesitation, no second guessing. If she felt guilty, she didn't show it. "Don't wait up Sunday," she added. "I might stay late, depending on how I feel." "Take your time," I said. That was the last thing I said to my wife before she left town with another man. I didn't follow her right away. I told myself I was going to work, same as always. I even got on the highway like I meant it. But somewhere around the I-71 split, I saw her car merge ahead of me. I don't know if it was instinct or something else, but I slowed down. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to keep her in sight. Which, as it turns out, I'm not very good at. I kept too much distance, worried she'd notice me. A delivery truck cut between us, then a red light, then another car. Within 5 minutes, she was gone. I sat at the light a little too long, staring at the empty lane ahead of me. The car behind me honked. I pulled forward slowly, maybe slower than I should have. That's when I saw the flashing lights in my rearview mirror. A state trooper walked up to my window, leaned down just enough to look inside. "Morning, sir," he said. "You okay?" "Yeah," I told him. "Why?" "You were driving about 10 under the limit back there. Then you stopped at a green light." I nodded. "Sorry," I said, "just distracted." He studied me for a second. Not suspicious, just curious. "You lost?" he asked. I almost laughed. "Not exactly," I said. "Just trying to figure out where I'm going." He gave a small smile. "Well, when you do try to get there at the posted speed limit." "Yes, sir." He stepped back, tapped the roof once, and waved me on. I drove another mile before I pulled into a Kroger parking lot and turned the engine off. So much for being a detective. At 52, I couldn't even follow my own wife for 10 minutes without getting pulled over. I sat there for a while, hands on the steering wheel, and then I did the only thing I knew how to do. I went to work. By the time I got to the Grand Whitmore, I had already made up my mind about one thing. I wasn't going to blow up my life based on a guess. I needed facts. Real ones. Inside the hotel, everything ran the way it always did. Guests checking out, housekeeping reports coming in, maintenance requests stacking up. The rhythm of a place that doesn't care about your personal problems. In a way, I was grateful for that. It gave me somewhere to stand. I went straight to my office and pulled up the reservation system. Now, there are rules in this business, strict ones. You don't go digging through guest information without a reason tied to your job. It's not just policy, it's law. So I kept it clean. I only looked at what I was allowed to see. Richard Carter's reservation was exactly what Marcia had shown me, but with more detail. 2 nights, presidential suite, Special services lined up champagne on arrival, private dinner at 8, breakfast set up in the Whitmore ballroom the next morning. That last part caught my attention. Breakfast in the ballroom wasn't standard for a romantic weekend. That was business. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. Anniversary stay, the note said. Anniversary of what? I picked up the phone and called down to the front desk. Marcia, I said when she answered. Carter stayed with us before. Twice, she said. Last year and earlier this spring. Same guest name. She paused. Same last name, she said. Different women. That settled something in my mind. This wasn't just an affair. It was a pattern. I thanked her and hung up, then sat there a while longer. After a few minutes, I opened our joint bank account on my phone. I hadn't planned to. I don't make a habit of checking up on money like that. But something about the way Elaine had been spending lately, it had been sitting in the back of my mind. It didn't take long to find it. A withdrawal just under $4,000 2 days earlier, labeled as home improvements. But the transaction details told a different story. A high-end watch retailer in Cincinnati. I stared at the number. Then I looked at the date again. 2 days ago, right before this spa weekend. I let out a slow breath. So not only was she meeting him, she'd bought him something. With our money. I put the phone down and rubbed my face with both hands. For a moment, I thought about calling her. Just dialing the number and asking her straight. But I knew how that would go. She'd deny it, or turn it around, or tell me I was overreacting. And if I was wrong, if somehow I was wrong, I'd be the one who broke something that couldn't be put back together. No, I needed more than suspicion. I needed truth. Later that afternoon, Marcia knocked again and stepped into my office without waiting. You should probably see this too, she said. She handed me a printed email. It was from Carter Urban Renewal Group. Subject line: partnership confirmation request. I read it once, then again. Richard Carter was asking our ownership group to confirm a strategic partnership between his company and the Grand Whitmore Hotel for use in investor materials. My stomach tightened. We didn't have any partnership with him. Not even close. I opened the attachment. Slide deck, clean design, polished language, the kind of thing that looks expensive even when it isn't. Then I saw it. A photo. Elaine standing beside Richard at some kind of event, smiling, well-dressed, comfortable, like she belonged there. The caption underneath read, Richard and Elaine Carter, hospitality investment partners. I stared at that line longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. Too clearly. Cheating I could wrap my head around even if I didn't want to. But this was something else. This was her building a different life, with a different name, and in that life, I didn't exist. I set the paper down slowly and leaned back in my chair. That's not a mistake, I said quietly. Marcia crossed her arms. No, she said, that's a plan. I nodded. And for the first time since all this started, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about my name, my work, and the one place in my life I had actually built with my own hands. I looked at the photo one more time. Then I folded it the same way I had folded the reservation. Neat, clean, final. That was when cheating stopped being the worst part, I said. I printed the entire presentation. Not because I needed a hard copy. We're paperless in most departments now. But I wanted something I could hold. Something that felt real in my hands. There's a difference between seeing a lie on a screen and holding it. On paper, it doesn't scroll away. I laid the pages out across my desk one by one. Clean fonts, clean charts, photos placed just right. It was the kind of presentation that could walk into a room and make people feel safe about writing checks. That's what bothered me the most. Not that it was sloppy. That it wasn't. Slide after slide talked about revitalizing historic properties, leveraging hospitality partnerships, restoring community value. It all sounded good, measured, thoughtful. If I didn't know better, I might have believed it myself. Then I got to the section with our hotel. The Grand Whitmore Hotel Strategic Hospitality Partner. That's what it said. Below it, bullet points about exclusive collaboration, preferred venue status, coordinated guest experience. None of it was true. And then there was her. A full-page photo. Elaine standing beside Richard, her hand lightly on his arm, smiling in that practiced way she had when she wanted to look composed but warm at the same time. The caption underneath read, Elaine Carter, Director of Client Relations. I sat back in my chair. That line didn't just hurt. It explained things. The late-night calls, the trips, the way she'd started dressing differently when she went out, the way she talked about feeling stuck without ever saying it directly. She hadn't just stepped out on our marriage. She'd stepped into a role, and she looked comfortable in it. I leaned forward and flipped the page. Financial projections, property lists, a timeline that stretched out over the next 2 years. And right there in the middle of it, a section labeled Hospitality Integration Phase 1. Our hotel's name showed up again. Not just once, 3 times. I felt something tighten in my jaw. This wasn't just Richard talking big. He was using us. Our name, our reputation, everything we'd rebuilt over the past few years. And she was standing next to him while he did it. I pushed the chair back and stood up, pacing once across the office before stopping at the window. Euclid Avenue looked the same as it had yesterday. Traffic, pedestrians, nothing out of place. I rested my hand on the glass for a second, then pulled it away. I needed to hear a voice that wasn't my own. So I called Megan. She picked up on video, which caught me off guard. Hey, Dad, she said, smiling at the screen. You okay? You look tired. I forced a small smile back. Long week, I said. She leaned closer to her phone, studying my face. Is Mom still on you about your schedule, she asked. She mentioned something last time we talked. There it was. Same story, same version of things. I swallowed. Something like that, I said. How's Pittsburgh? She rolled her eyes. Cold, always cold. I bought this chair from a flea market, though you'd hate it. It's ugly, but it's comfortable. I nodded, listening. She kept talking about work, about her apartment, about nothing important and everything important at the same time. Normal life. The kind I suddenly realized I might be about to lose. You should come visit, she said. Seriously. We'll get bad pizza and pretend it's good. I almost laughed. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. She paused, then looked at me again. Dad, you sure you're okay? For a second, I thought about telling her. Just putting it all out there and letting someone else carry part of it with me. But I didn't. Just tired, I said, that's all. She nodded slowly. All right, don't work yourself to death, okay? I won't. We hung up. I sat there for a moment staring at the blank screen. Then there was a knock at my door. Marcia stepped in holding something between 2 fingers. Found this at the concierge desk, she said. Guy left a stack of them earlier. She handed it to me. A business card. Heavy stock, clean design. Elaine Carter, Hospitality Client, Relations Carter, Urban Renewal Group. I turned it over. There was handwriting on the back. Not printed, written. I recognized it immediately. Elaine's. After this weekend, the old life ends. New chapter begins. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. Completely. She wasn't confused. She wasn't caught up in something temporary. She had made a decision. And she had written it down. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them again. Where'd you find this, I asked. Concierge desk, Marcia said. Carter's people were handing them out earlier, acting like they owned the place. I nodded. Yeah, I said, they think they do. Marcia didn't ask anything else. She just waited. That's what she does. I picked up the presentation again, then the card. Set them side by side. My wife's new name. My hotel's name. Both being used like they belonged to someone else. Get me Patricia Lowell, I said. Marcia gave a small nod and stepped out. Patricia didn't take long to call back. She was direct like always. I've reviewed the material, she said. He's misrepresenting a partnership. That alone is enough to shut him down. Quietly, I asked. There was a pause on the line. That depends, she said, on what you're trying to protect. I leaned back in my chair. Explain. You can address this privately, she said. Send a cease and desist, pull him aside, end it without noise. And the other option? You let him present, she said, and you correct him in the room. I looked down at the business card in my hand. Elaine Carter. Once you go public, Patricia added, There's no separating the business from the personal. Whatever you say in that room, it doesn't come back. I knew what she meant, not just about the hotel, about my marriage. If I do it publicly, I said, it ends everything. Yes, she said simply. I didn't answer right away. I thought about the kitchen table, the phone call with Monica, the empty highway, the name on that reservation. I thought about 24 years. Then I looked at the card again. After this weekend, the old life ends. She had already decided. She just hadn't told me. I'll be at the breakfast, I said. Another pause. You're sure? Patricia asked. No, I said, but I'll be there. We hung up. A few minutes later, Marcia came back in. Carter's team made a request, she said. They want you to introduce their partnership at the breakfast tomorrow. I almost smiled. Do they? I said. They don't know, she added quietly. I know, I said. I picked up the business card one more time, then slid it into my jacket pocket. For once, I said the lie invited the truth to the microphone. I met them at the elevators. That part wasn't required. A front desk agent could have done it, or one of the bellmen. But I walked around the counter, picked up their bags myself, and nodded toward the bank of brass doors like it was any other check-in. Right this way, I said. Richard Carter didn't question it. Men like him don't think about who's doing what as long as it gets done. Elaine hesitated for half a second, then followed. The elevator doors closed with a soft thud. Old building, but the mechanics were solid. I'd spent a week with maintenance making sure of that myself last winter. We stood in a line that would have looked normal to anyone else. Me closest to the panel, Richard just behind my shoulder, Elaine to the side clutching her purse with both hands. No one spoke. The numbers ticked up slowly. 2, 3, 4. Richard broke the silence. I assume the champagne's already up there, he said. I don't like waiting around once we get in. It is, I said, on ice. And the dinner? Scheduled for 8. He gave a satisfied nod. That's what I like, competence. I kept my eyes on the numbers. 7, 8, 9. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Elaine lift her hand and touch the necklace at her throat. Just lightly, her fingers resting there, like they always did when she was nervous. 24 years and some habits don't change. I used to find that comforting. Now it just made everything feel closer than it should have been. View's good from this floor, Richard asked. Lake facing, I said. Clear tonight. Perfect, he said, slipping his arm around Elaine's waist. My queen deserves a view. The words hung in the air longer than they should have. I felt something rise up in my chest, sharp, fast, but I swallowed it down before it reached my face. 10, 11, 12. The doors opened. Right this way, I said again. The hallway was quiet, thick carpet soft, lighting the kind of silence people pay for. I walked ahead of them, key card in hand, and stopped outside the presidential suite. For a second, I just stood there. This was a room I'd spent hours preparing over the years. Inspections, upgrades, staff briefings. It was the best we had. And tonight I was about to open it for my wife and another man. I slid the card into the reader. The light turned green. The door clicked open. After you, I said. Richard stepped in first, already looking around, already evaluating. Not bad, he said. Elaine followed slowly. I stayed by the door watching them take it in. Everything was exactly where it should be. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a clear view of Lake Erie, the water reflecting the last light of the evening. Fresh white roses arranged on the table, champagne in a silver bucket ice just beginning to melt around the bottle. 2 place settings laid out for dinner, crisp linen polished silver. And on the back of the sofa, 2 white robes, both embroidered with Carter in small elegant stitching. Elaine saw them. I watched the moment it registered. Her shoulders tightened, just slightly. Most people wouldn't notice. I did. Richard walked over to the table, picked up the card, and opened it. Nice touch, he said, grinning. They know how to treat people here. He read it out loud. To the woman who makes every room feel like home. He laughed softly. See, he said, looking at Elaine. This is how professionals do romance. I kept my voice even. We try. He didn't hear anything in that answer. Elaine did. She looked at me, then really looked this time. Not like she was trying to figure out if I was there. Like she finally understood that I wasn't going anywhere. Anything else you need, I asked. Richard shook his head. No, we're good. I nodded once. Enjoy your stay. I turned and stepped out into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind me. The latch clicked into place, and just like that, they were inside. Together. I walked a few steps down the hallway before I had to stop. I put my hand against the wall, leaned into it just enough to steady myself. It wasn't anger. Not exactly. It was something heavier. Like standing in a room you used to live in and realizing someone else had already moved in all their furniture. I stayed there for a few seconds, then pushed off and headed back toward the elevator. Work didn't stop because your life did. Downstairs, the lobby looked the same as it had an hour ago. People checking in, people checking out, luggage moving, voices, low glasses clinking at the bar. Marcia caught my eye from behind the desk. "You good?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. She didn't believe me, but she nodded anyway. About 40 minutes later, I was walking down the service corridor near the kitchens when I heard my name. "Daniel." I turned. Elaine stood there just inside the hallway away from the main traffic. She must have come down the back stairs. For a moment, we just looked at each other. No Richard, no audience. Just the two of us. "Don't do this here," she said, her voice low. I frowned slightly. "Do what?" She took a step closer. "You know what she said. Don't make a scene, not in your workplace." My workplace. I almost smiled at that. "You checked into my hotel under another man's name," I said. "I'm not the one making a scene." She flinched. "I didn't know it was your hotel," she said quickly. "I thought you were still in Columbus most of the time." "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't know." She opened her mouth and closed it again. For a second, I thought she might apologize. She didn't. Instead, she crossed her arms. "After everything I sacrificed staying with you while you built this," she gestured vaguely, "this hotel, you can't just let me have one weekend." I stared at her. "Have what I asked, a room, a new last name." Her jaw tightened. "You've been gone for years, Daniel," she said. "Even when you're home, you're not there. Richard, he sees me. He listens." I felt that one. Not because it was entirely true, but because there was enough truth in it to make it hurt. "And this is how you fix that?" I asked. "By pretending to be someone else?" She softened then, just a little. "I didn't plan it like this," she said. "It just happened." I shook my head. "No," I said, "it didn't." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Just get through tomorrow morning," she said. "Let the breakfast happen. After that, we can talk, like adults." There it was. Not regret. Strategy. She needed me to stay quiet long enough for whatever Richard was planning to go through. I looked at her for a long moment. The woman I'd built a life with? The woman standing in front of me now? They weren't the same person anymore. "Go back to your suite," I said. Her eyes searched my face. "Daniel." "Go," I repeated. She hesitated, then turned and walked back toward the stairs. I stood there until I couldn't hear her footsteps anymore. At 11:18 that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Patricia. "Carter's investor packet includes forged authorization language. We confront him tomorrow. Be ready." I read it once. Then again. Down the hall, through two walls and a locked door, my wife was in a room with another man. Upstairs, everything was set for their anniversary. And in the morning, the truth was going to walk into a room full of people who thought they were there for something else entirely. I put my phone away and leaned back against the wall. I didn't sleep that night. I just waited for morning to tell the truth. I got to the hotel before 6. Not because I had to. The event wasn't until 8, but I wasn't going to sit in my office at home pretending this was a normal morning. Cleveland was still waking up when I walked in. The lobby lights were softer, the bar closed, the piano quiet. Housekeeping carts lined up near the service elevator. Coffee brewing somewhere in the back. Normal routine. That helped. I went straight to my office, closed the door, and loosened my tie. Sat down, stood back up, sat again. I must have done that 3 or 4 times before I finally just stayed standing. On my desk were the same 2 things from the night before: the printed presentation and the business card. Elaine Carter. I picked it up, turned it over. "After this weekend, the old life ends. New chapter begins." I set it back down. "Yeah," I said quietly, "it does." There was a knock. Marcia stepped in, already dressed for the day, hair pulled back, coffee in hand. "They're setting up in the ballroom," she said, "and you're not going to like this." "What now?" "They brought banners." Of course they did. I followed her down the hallway to the Whitmore ballroom. Doors open, tables set, coffee stations ready, about a dozen people already moving around Carter's team, a couple early investors catering staff finishing setup. And right there at the front of the room, a banner. White background, clean lettering. In partnership with the Grand Whitmore Hotel. I stared at it for a second. Marcia folded her arms beside me. Well, she said that's bold. I let out a small breath. Bold's one word for it. Stupid's another. That earned a quick glance from me. She shrugged. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. I nodded once. Get Patricia down here when she arrives, I said, and make sure everything's recorded. Already done. That's the kind of team I had. By 8, the room was full. About 40 people, give or take. Men and women in their 50s, 60s, some older. Local investors, a couple city redevelopment folks, people who had money and wanted to put it somewhere that sounded safe. They took their seats, poured coffee, made small talk. Richard Carter moved through the room like he owned it. Confident, relaxed, handshakes, smiles, easy jokes. Elaine was with him. She wore a navy dress this time, simple, professional, her name tag clipped just below her shoulder. Elaine Carter. She laughed at something Richard said, but it didn't reach her eyes. She saw me when I stepped into the room. For a second, everything else faded. She knew. Not the details, but enough. I walked past her without stopping and took a seat near the side until things got underway. At 8:15, Richard stepped up to the front. Good morning, everyone, he said, voice smooth and confident. I appreciate you all being here. He launched into it. Restoration projects, community investment, bringing life back to older buildings. It was good, I'll give him that. He knew how to talk. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was doing something important. Halfway through, he gestured toward the room. And of course, he said none of this would be possible without strong hospitality partnerships. There it was. He let that sit for a moment, then smiled. And now I'd like to bring up someone who's been instrumental in coordinating our relationship with this incredible property. He looked right at me. Daniel Mercer. A few people turned, heads shifted. I stood up. My legs felt steady. That surprised me again. As I walked to the front, I passed Elaine. I slowed just enough to lean in slightly. I'm sorry it had to be here, I said quietly. She didn't answer. I stepped up to the podium. Looked out at the room. 40 people, coffee cups, notepads, expectation. I adjusted the microphone. Good morning, I said. My name is Daniel Mercer. I oversee operations here at the Grand Whitmore. A few nods, a couple polite smiles. I took a breath. Before anyone writes a check, I said I need to clarify something. The room shifted. Not loud, just a subtle change. People straightening in their seats. Richard's smile tightened. This hotel, I continued, does not have a partnership with Carter Urban Renewal Group. Silence. You could feel it. Richard stepped forward slightly. Daniel, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I raised a hand, not aggressively, just enough. There hasn't, I said. Behind me, Patricia stood up. She moved to the side where a screen had been set for the presentation. With your permission, she said to the room, I'd like to show you something. No one objected. The slide changed. Instead of Richard's polished presentation, Patricia brought up a document. The authorization language. The one Richard had sent to ownership. Mr. Carter's materials include this statement, she said, claiming a formal strategic partnership with this hotel. She paused. That statement is false. Richard let out a short laugh. This is ridiculous, he said. We've had ongoing discussions. With outdated internal terminology, I said. He stopped. I pointed to the screen. That language references department structures we eliminated 2 years ago, I said. Anyone actually working with us would know that. A murmur moved through the room. Low voices, side glances. Richard's confidence slipped just a fraction. This is a technicality, he said quickly. We're still aligned in principle. Sir, a voice from the back cut in. One of his assistants, younger guy, mid-30s maybe. Name was Kyle, if I remembered right. He looked nervous. Sir Kyle repeated, holding a microphone someone had handed him. You told me to paste that language in. Richard turned on him. Kyle, now is not the time. You said it would make it look official, Kyle added, voice shaking. That did it. The room broke into whispers. A man near the front, gray hair, probably pushing 70, leaned back in his chair, and said loud enough for half the room to hear, "Son, at our age, we don't have time for this nonsense." A few people laughed. Not kindly. Richard's face flushed. He grabbed for control. "My wife can clarify our hospitality connections," he said, reaching for Elaine's hand. Elaine. She froze. I looked at her. Really looked. Then I spoke. "Elaine Mercer is not your wife." The room went dead quiet. Richard's grip tightened on her arm. "What is this?" he snapped. I kept my voice level. "She's mine," I said. Then after a beat, "At least, she used to be." Elaine whispered my name. "Daniel, please." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "She checked into this hotel last night under a false name," I said, "and she's been presented in these materials as part of a business relationship that doesn't exist." No yelling. No accusations beyond what was already clear. Just facts. Patricia stepped forward again. "This event is over," she said. "We will be following up with formal legal action regarding the unauthorized use of our brand." Security moved in quiet but firm. Richard tried one last angle. "This is personal," he said, pointing at me. "He's a front desk manager with a grudge." From the side of the room, Marcia spoke up. "Actually, she said he runs the place better than you run your scam." A couple more laughs. Richard had nothing left. He let go of Elaine's arm and walked out without looking back. Kyle followed him, still pale. One by one, people started gathering their things. No shouting, no chaos. Just quiet exits and short conversations. The kind of silence that says more than noise ever could. Elaine stood near the coffee table. Alone. Her name tag still clipped to her dress. Elaine Carter. She looked at me. Not angry. Not even defensive. Just tired. "Can we talk?" she said softly, as husband and wife. I glanced at the name on her chest. Then back at her. "Which wife?" I asked. Richard Carter didn't make it past noon. He came down to the front desk in a different suit. Same attitude, only thinner now, like something had been stripped off him in that ballroom and hadn't come back. "I'm checking out," he said, dropping his key cards on the counter. No apology, no eye contact. "Of course, sir," Marcia said, polite as always. She ran his card for incidentals. Paused. Tried again. Then she looked up with that same calm expression she used on every difficult guest. "Sir," she said, "it appears your card isn't going through." He let out a short, irritated laugh. "That's not possible. Try it again." "I did," she said, "twice." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Use a different terminal." Marcia didn't move. "Sir, all our terminals are connected." A few people nearby pretended not to listen. Richard's jaw tightened. "For God's sake," he muttered, pulling out another card and sliding it across. This one went through. Barely. He grabbed the receipt, signed it with a sharp, angry motion, and turned to leave. At the doors, he hesitated just long enough to look back. Not at me. At the room. Like he was trying to figure out how it had all slipped. Then he walked out. And just like that, he was gone. No grand exit, no last word. Just another man leaving a hotel with less than he came in with. Elaine stayed. She stood near the lobby seating area for a while after he left, like she wasn't sure where to go next. The necklace was still around her neck, catching the light when she moved. I watched from a distance. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed to decide what came next. After a few minutes, she looked over at me. I nodded once toward the hallway that led to the staff offices. She followed. We didn't speak until we were inside a small meeting room near the back. No windows, just a table, a couple of chairs, and a vending machine humming faintly against the wall. No champagne. No roses. No roles to play. She sat down first. I stayed standing for a second, then took the chair across from her. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then she started to cry. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears she didn't bother to hide. "I didn't think it would end like this," she said. I nodded. Neither did I. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know how it looks," she said. "I know what you think." I leaned back slightly. "Then say it," I said, "in your words." She took a breath. "I felt invisible," she said, "for a long time." I didn't interrupt. "You were always working," she went on. "Always at the hotel, always fixing something. And I kept telling myself it was temporary, that things would settle down, but they never did." She looked up at me. "And I didn't have anything of my own," she said. Not really. Megan grew up. The house didn't need me the same way. And I didn't know who I was anymore. There it was. Not an excuse. An explanation. Richard made me feel like I mattered, she said. Like I was part of something. Like I wasn't just waiting around. I let that sit for a moment. I get that, I said. She looked surprised. I do, I added. I just don't get this. I gestured lightly toward the door, toward the hotel, toward everything that had just happened. This wasn't just you finding something for yourself, I said. This was you building a whole other life and not telling me. She dropped her gaze. I didn't plan it, she said again. I shook my head. You wrote it down, I said. Her eyes snapped back up. The card, I said. I saw it. Her shoulders sagged. That wasn't supposed to. After this weekend, the old life ends, I said quietly. That doesn't sound like something that just happened. She didn't answer. For a long time, we just sat there. Two people who had once known each other better than anyone else in the world. Now trying to figure out what was left. Finally, she spoke again. He said he'd bring me on, she said, after this weekend. A real position, client relations, travel meetings, something of my own. I nodded slowly. And you believed him? She gave a small, tired laugh. I wanted to. That part I understood more than I wanted to admit. Were you going to tell me I asked? She hesitated. After she said, once things were settled. Once things were settled. Once she had something lined up. Once I was no longer necessary. I looked at her for a long moment. I didn't lose my wife this weekend, Elaine, I said. I lost her years ago. I just refused to admit it. She closed her eyes. More tears. But there wasn't anything left to say. Not really. We talked about logistics after that. Practical things. She would go back to Columbus, pack what she needed. We'd speak to a lawyer. No shouting, no dragging it out. Just done. A few weeks later, I stood in our house in Columbus going through things I hadn't touched in years. Closets, drawers, boxes in the back of the home. I found our wedding album in the bottom of a cabinet, sat down on the floor and opened it. There we were, younger, smiling, standing in front of a small church with a borrowed suit and a dress that didn't quite fit right at the shoulders. We looked happy. Not perfect, but real. I ran my hand over the page once, then closed the album and set it aside. I didn't throw it away. Some things don't need to be erased. They just stop being part of your present. Megan called that night. Dad, she said, come to Pittsburgh this weekend. We'll get bad pizza and pretend it's good. I smiled. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. Life didn't change overnight after that. There was paperwork, conversations, quiet mornings that felt different than they used to. But something inside me shifted. I started getting up earlier, walking more, not because I was trying to become someone new, just because I realized I hadn't been taking care of the person I already was. Sometimes I went out to a small lake outside Columbus, sat there with a fishing line in the water. Didn't always catch anything. That wasn't really the point. A few months later, back at the hotel, I was walking through the lobby when an older couple came in. 60s, maybe early 70s. The husband looked nervous, holding on to the reservation confirmation like it might disappear if he let go. Anniversary, he told the front desk. Thought we'd try somewhere nice for once. His wife smiled at him like it meant more than the room. I watched them for a second. Then I stepped over and quietly upgraded them to a corner suite. No announcement, no big gesture. Just something small. Because some people still mean what they promise each other. And that's worth taking care of. I stood there for a moment after they went up. The lobby looked the same as always, but I didn't feel the same in it. Not invisible. Not anymore. Dignity doesn't make noise. It doesn't need to. Sometimes it just stands there steady and quiet until the truth has nowhere left to hide. If you've ever had to choose self-respect over comfort, you know how heavy that choice can feel. If this story meant something to you, share your thoughts. And if you want to hear more stories like this, I'd be glad to tell them.